Hi, welcome back. This is Meg, and I'm going to talk with you today about round Zentangle, round tangling. And, some folks would just consider this to be a mandala because it's round, and I would not, because I think a mandala is kind of a specific thing. And I don't want to go into all of the historical elements of what a mandala is right now. I'm not an expert in it, frankly, but I find that the round tile is just lovely to work on. And I'll show you a few of the ones that I've done to give you an idea of the variety of things that you can do in this round format. This is in another colored tile. This one is called Renaissance, and it's actually a brown paper that is just beautiful and gives you this real Renaissance antique-y look. I've done lots of different ones in different formats, and some of them, as you can see, are not perfectly centered, and that's okay with me. And others have sort of a pattern in the center, like this one, rather than blossoming out from the middle. This is more of a blossoming from the middle, if you will, where I've started in the center and then worked my way out one little section at a time. And then here's an example of one that's completely not centered, but works in this round format. So today, and first let me show you this too. This is a mandala. I'm not sure if you can see it well enough here, but what I've done is very faintly, using a compass, I have marked lines, circles on it in various places. And the real reason to do that is, for me, is to give me a guideline for how far distances are, and to give me the chance or the opportunity to make it as symmetrical as I'd like to. Some of these, if I showed you a real kind of stricter mandala design, you would see that that really is important, because you want things to be always symmetrical and a little bit more even spaced. So I did that here to show you that that's possible. And again, I'm not sure that with the lighting quite the way it is that you can see those lines, but they're very, very faint. But for today's demonstration or class, I'm going to use a blank one without those circles drawn, and just show you kind of the organic nature of how I work in a round space, and how it's not necessary to find the perfect center. It's not necessary to divide it into perfect spaces in order to make a beautiful thing. And this is a great example of that. This is one where you might have thought that I found the true center and then worked intentionally in the space to make it as symmetrical as I could. And I did it by eye, this one, rather than with a compass. Probably just most noted here, these 2 points on the sides were across from one another, and then these two were across, and then these two, if you see. So just really letting my eye be my guide about it, but not measuring the distances between things or trying to make it perfect. So that's what I'm going to do today, is not worry too much about symmetry, but to do things by eye and by sight, and to show you what that might look like. So I'm looking at this, and I think that the center looks like it's about, let me use my pencil just for the sake of it, about there. Well, maybe a little bit there. It's good enough for my purpose. And just for the sake of starting, sometimes the hardest part is the first mark. And it's just hard to put that pen to paper, because you feel like then you're committed to it, and what if you mess it up? So I always try to just start with something, go ahead and get a mark on the paper, so that I break that barrier of fear about not making that first mark. And so I'm going to start with a simple flower. I mean, I don't know about you, but I've been drawing flowers pretty much my whole life. And a 4-petal flower in a very flat look is something I've done a bazillion times. I know how to do it, so that's a great place to start. And then I'm just going to start working around and kind of, you might just call it decorating it. I'm decorating this with a variety of patterns that I'll put into place as I go around. Now, if you want something that has a fair amount of variety to it, where different angles are coming out, and you have sections to work in like this, where you've got rounder things and portions that you could put different designs in, then you want to make sure that you create space for that. So it's pretty soon after I've got kind of a center here to work with, I'm going to do some things that give me some spaces to work to define this space. I'm just going to make some lines that go out like this. I've never done this one before. I'm making this up as I go along. So if yours doesn't look like mine, that's totally okay. If you're doing something completely different while I'm doing this, that's just great. I do turn my tile quite a bit because I know that my hand works best at a certain angle. Also trying not to have my hand directly over it where you can't see it, so I want to create some space here. So I want to demonstrate a couple of designs for you that are some good standbys to use when you're not quite sure what to do. So first I'm going to go right here and I'm going to do a little bit of crescent moon. You've seen this one before if you've watched my previous videos, and it's a great one to go to. I'm going to create these crescent moons here with 3 auras around them, right in these spaces. One of the things I've learned over time in doing this is that what I've learned is that I have a tendency to work in the same scale, meaning I tend to sort of space things the same. The distance between this line and that line I often make the same throughout the piece that I'm doing. And that can be fine. That's my trademark, I guess, and that's the way I do it. But I strive to push myself outside of that and to use different line weights and color in more portions with black and expand my repertoire of tangles so that I have more to work with and more variety. I find the more that I do that, the more interesting my tangles are and my finished pieces are. The bolder I can be in certain spaces when I have a lot of white space to work with, then I can build on those bold elements later with more detail. But if I start out with too much detail, then I have a tendency to go to an enormous amount of detail throughout the entire piece. Here's an example of that. I showed it to you a second ago, but let me just show you again. Here, I started out in the middle with these thin, narrow kind of bars, and I stayed at that scale for almost the entire piece until I got to the edge and then did these flowers things a little larger. But I love the way the piece came out. It's just fine as it is, but it is basically all in the same scale, if that makes sense. So here's another one. Most of this is in the same scale, right? Same size pieces in there. So I want to try to challenge myself to move outside of that scale and do things like this, a great big cross in the middle. Let's see what happens with that. I'm just thinking here, what do I want to do next? And I think that I will just keep going without trying to overthink it too much. I'm going to put some of these shapes here. They're not perfect circles, they're kind of, I've got the tops and the bottoms of this shape kind of chopped off, if you will. Do you see? But they have kind of look like a cabochon or a, some sort of a stone that's set in some kind of a setting. It's interesting. Remembering to breathe and not hold my pen too tightly. Pardon my sniffing. I think I've got a little allergy going on. In the Northwest, we have unique stuff flying around in the air right now. Yeah, I've got this part here where I do these lines that make it look a little bit like it's going behind the one in front of it there, so that they're sort of layered there. Now, I want to expand into this space. I want to get a little bit more movement out into the middle of it, so I'm going to take a chance that I can make it straight, some lines that are not too, not symmetrical. I'm going to try to do it by hand. I'm pretty good at this, but it's taken me years of practice, so if you're not, don't beat yourself up for it. It's not... I have a pretty fair amount of control over my pen and the ability to eyeball it, but it has taken me years of drawing on the church bulletin to get that right. There we go. Now, let's see. Now here's a great design that I'll show you, a great tangle in this space. Let me look and see what's the best way to do it. Well, I'll go here, because what I want is to be able to draw an angle like that, and I'm going to do it back and forth like this, and then wherever I have this line, the first line, I'm going to do parallel lines to that, and then turn it slightly and do parallel lines to that one, and then turn and do a parallel line to this one, all the way up like that. Do you see? And then this one will be the same as that. So then, in order to give myself a little symmetry here, I'm going to do this one the same as I did that, coming out of here, this corner, and then go like this. And draw my zigzag lines meant to do that. And go this way. And then this way. And then again this way. There we go. Now I'll do the same angle here, and do this. Now it's going to create a beautiful secondary pattern. See there how this is? This contrast of that rounded part with this part. Once this whole thing is done, that'll end up being something we probably can work with out in this next space, which is sort of fun. I love it when a secondary design element appears unintentionally. It's like, oh, look at that little gift that I created there. Look at that. What a surprise. Okay, this goes this way, and that way. Might as well get the next one down too. 1, 2, 3. Sometimes it, the space allows for 4 zigzags, and sometimes it doesn't. Just, it's not perfectly spaced, as you'll see, but it doesn't seem to matter too much, right? From the overall design, you're not going to pay attention to one design element like this when it's so busy. It does not mess it up if you get one too many zigs on one piece, or one too many zags. Zig and zag. Okay. Now I will just go back and forth here, nice and steady, slow, deliberate, drawing these parallel lines inside of this space. Now I have messed up on these before where I kind of start doing them from a different side, and I have to correct myself and go back up to the top and make sure I get the first one right so that I follow the right pattern. And, you know, I mean, no biggie if I don't, but I mean to, so I don't want to mess it up. If I intended to do it one way, I want to stick with it. So this is what I'm trying to do, make sure that my parallel lines go the right direction from the start. There we go. There we go. You see, it's not perfect, symmetrical or anything, and I'm okay with that. Alrighty, let's see what's next. I want to do a couple of lines around it like this. All right, let's do something that springs out of this, something organic and like it looks like it's growing out of here. I'm going to do a lovely mooka. This is a pattern that is called mooka, M-O-O-K-A, and it's a kind of, I think, kind of a classic Zentangle pattern, and Maria does it a lot, and she does it beautifully. You'll see it just almost in every single thing that she does, and it's one that I took a little time to figure out personally. I couldn't quite figure out how to integrate it into my pieces without it taking on a very different look, and I don't know, I just didn't feel comfortable with it until I used it a lot more, and so now I feel a little more comfortable, but sometimes it's still a bit of a challenge for me to integrate it. So I'm in a learning curve with this one, and it's fun to discover new ways to incorporate it, and that's what I'm doing right here. So we'll see what I can do with it. And the way that you make it is starting with the stem, drawing up with the stem. Now I'm pretending it goes behind this other one. Make this ball like that, a bubble, and then draw that little stem back down and go behind. You see there? And they're not quite, it's sort of a variation on a paisley, right? A paisley would not have this little tuck in right there. It would be a little bit more continuous in its curviness there. But they look nice when they sort of look like they're coming out of a space like that. That's what I'm doing with them today. Let's see here. I'm going to tuck some little orbs in here, little orbs. I'm just going to stick them in the little spaces that got created behind the mucas. I love to fill in those little spaces with these little bubbles. Now I've been doing bubbles for a long time, where I just squeeze in bubbles in the little nooks and crannies of the designs that I do. And then when I discovered Zentangle, I was like, well, look at that, I do bubbles too. So that's one that I enjoy. Let's see, just squeeze them in the little spaces. Usually when I do this, I try to go for a large one first. You know, commit one of the larger spaces to a big bubble, and then work to the smaller ones. But I do like a variety of sizes of the little bubbles. So I want to squeeze a big one in when there's a big space, and then surround it by littler ones like that. I like the feeling that maybe those bubbles got stuck there when they were popping out of wherever they came from. There they are. Lots of little bubbles. I like the way it looks. Now, I think I'll add a couple more coming out, because I want to expand this a little bit. So I'm gonna try to make a few more that come out and give it a little bit of expansion on those sides. Let's see if I can do this. Pretend that one comes out right there. Okay, come out here and fill that one in, and come out here and put that one in. You can sort of see that I'm building symmetry in when I feel that symmetry matters. I've added those elements now, so you can see that it's sort of becoming, or is, I'm maintaining a sense of symmetry, but at the same time, each of these different sections is different from the others. So for me, that just feels really handmade, and I like it. I don't want it to look like someone made this on a computer. I want it to be clear that it was hand drawn, and I don't want to mess it up, but I like that variety, so I'll stick with that a little bit. Let's see here. I'm gonna try to create a space that I can put something in. I'm gonna do it like this. Let's see here. I'm looking at the distance here and thinking, what would that distance be over here? And so where do I want these lines to go? And I went from the side of this thing to the side of that thing. So I want to go from the side of this to the side of that. So I just do something like that. And the same over here. And the side of this to the side of that. And then, you know, I want to go from here to there. Look at that. So I've got some interesting symmetry there. And now I'm going to put a different kind of design in here to show you. I know this has a name, but I don't know it. I just don't keep track of the names, I'm sorry. But the way this is done is a line in one direction, opposite a line in the other direction. Maybe just watch me do it first, and then you can give it a try. Pretending there's one underneath there. And then this one would come down about there. There. Now I'm going to do it over here as well. A line this way, and a line that way, and a line this way, and a line that way, and a line this way, and a line that way, and this way, and that way. If the names of these tangles are important to you, I hope you'll comment in the box below so that I will take the time to look them up and list them for you. But if you are more like me and don't care what the name of the tangle is, then I won't go to that effort. I'm happy to look them up, but I just don't keep track very well. Sometimes I know them because I've learned them over time, and other times I heard the name once and I just didn't retain it. And there it is. So now with this one, it's about how you weight the lines. When by weighting, I mean where do you add more black or possibly shading, but in this case black, to give this more of a shape. What is this design really supposed to look like? And it's really bold and cool. And so the way that it comes together is you take each line and attach it at the base with a little, like kind of draw a little base for it. Do you see? Draw a little stand, if you will, for that, and curve it around. You see? A little stand for it. And then I'll do that again. Draw a little stand here and here. And I'm just following this pattern and breathing as I do. If I'm going too slow for you, feel free to speed up the video and catch up with me at the next section. Or if I'm going too fast, just press pause and do all of your coloring in on these things, whatever pace works for you. You can already see how that's what I mean by weighting. I think there you see you're creating a depth to it. And we're going to do the same thing on the other side of this design, so be prepared for that. Oops, that one's a little bit bolder than the others. Whoopsie. Sometimes I get around all the way around and I realize, oh, well, I got bigger as I went, and that this thing just grew over the course of doing it. I kept getting a little bit more generous with my line weights, and then I end up on the other side with something else. Oops, I see I did that top one just by habit. Just went ahead and did it, but I wanted to do all of one side first so you could see the effect really clearly of what this does when you round out these corners. It's a, you know, it's a little bit of an optical illusion, but just by doing straight lines, you create this cool effect. Looks like, I don't know, like maybe lasagna noodles or some sort of back and forth thing. Would love to know. Tell me what you think it looks like in the comments. Intestines. I have a lot of friends in healthcare. I bet they'll say, yeah, it looks a lot like intestines. Okay, now I'm going to do the top ones like this. Same thing. And look what it's doing. See what it does there? Love that. Super cool. Now, what can I do here to make this work? There we go. Let's see here. Whoops. Did I miss any? Oh, I really went off the center there. Look at that. It does have a really nice feel to it, doesn't it? Now I'm going to just do a little touching up where I think that sort of like if it was repeating all the way around, what would it do, right? So that the continuity of the pattern carries through. And also I do feel like that I want to color in the background behind these little bubbles. That can be a time-consuming process and also, you know, kind of relaxing. It's a real hyper-focus of going around and getting all these little tiny spaces and coloring those in with black. And I will do some of them so you can see why this is especially important, or not important, but, you know, interesting in its appearance alongside this, right? It's where it continues this black and white boldness there. And I'm just barely, don't have to really color much at all, just barely tap my pen in there, and sometimes I don't get it quite right, but it's okay. We're going to do some shading too, and that really forgives a lot of these little tiny spaces that you might think, oh, it's so messy there. I don't like the way that looks, but you see here now that black behind those dots continues the depth around, and now I can go back and do more here. And we'll definitely get the opportunity to do some shading around these mucas that will help them to stand out against this background. Sometimes I'll just go back around with my pen and get the outline a little stronger. So I've now finished the coloring in behind those bubbles, and I have proceeded to filling in these spaces in between these little stepping stones here in these sections, and encourage you to do the same if you'd like. This gives this portion a nice bold pattern. You see, so I've colored in all of these black corners and spaces between those stones, and I'm almost finished with that now. I went off camera to do those, so if you're asking when did she do that, I went off camera so that you wouldn't have to sit and just watch me do it, but feel free to pause and fill those in and catch up. There we go. So I've got this all now completed, and I feel like these spaces here should also be filled in. No particular reason. Maybe they're just the background of that other portion. Don't know. Let's see here. There we go. I'm going to do this. A large aura around those portions that came out. My pen skipped a little bit. There. This one's not as big, but I do want the round part to be as big so that it fits along with the other ones. There we go. Even though my muka didn't come out as far on that one. That's okay. There we go. So you see I'm just building. This is, very similar to a mandala where I'm building it as I go, starting from the center and moving my way out with just different elements that build on the last one. It's not measured and perfect, but it's very striking in its final, as it comes along. So I'm going to go like this, sort of create a star pattern here, or like as if they're shining. I'm not sure how this is going to work where they're smaller. I think it'll work out fine. Let's go like this. Well, I'm going to just do something a little different here. Going to fill in these with a repeating pattern of concentric squares, or they're not quite squares, so they won't. You see how I did it? Just start here, follow that line, follow that line, that one, and then go on the inside a little bit, like that, until I can't go anymore. It's kind of a Greek look I don't know what. Someone put it in the comments if you know where this pattern originates or where we could find some. I just know that it's been around. So I'm going to start on that side of this one. And so you see when it disappears into the next side, I just pretend that it continues. Oh, I love the way that looks. I don't think I've ever done it like this before. I like it. I'm going to pretend that that goes all the way up like that. Yeah, look at those. That looks great. There we go. Yeah, I'm loving this now. I want to do some kind of a border around the whole thing, and I'm looking at some of my other tiles to see if I have some inspiration here that maybe something I could really do as a border. I think I'll do something like a plant sort of thing with a vine, and fill in those spaces with lots of leaves and curlicues and things. So let's try that. I'm going to start with in the middle of this, and I'm going to go just out with a vine like that, and then from there I'm going to go again with another vine and end it in the middle of that one. I don't have a plan, so let's just see what happens here. A vine like that, and another one, and then another one, and then another one. We'll just keep going. There we go. And so I have the start of a vine pattern around this, and I'll now decide what to do with it. Let's see. I'm gonna figure out some sort of a flower design to come off of here. I'm just gonna design it as I go. Let's see, something with a little head on it, and it like this, and it'll have 3 petals like that. What's your flower look like? It doesn't have to look like mine, and put the little things that stick out. Little, oh, what do you call those? Parts of a flower. I'm going to do it over here again. And another 3-part flower, 3-petal flower, with little things that come out like that. That one goes off the page, that's okay. Let's see here, another one over here. Sometimes I invent something and then I don't like it as much as I did in the beginning or the first time or whatever, but there's no mistakes, and I've done this whole thing in pen, so if I don't like these little flowers here, I will have to change them as I go. And so far, they're not my favorite, but I have confidence that I can make something with them that I'm going to like even more, so I'm just going to stick with it and not abandon because of one little flower shape that I might have, a little less confidence in. It just doesn't matter. It'll all come together. Oops, I forgot these little bits on most of them there, so I'll go back and stick those in. They can come out in different directions, just like nature. Okay, so I've got that, and now I'm going to aura around these, the outside of these things, just as they are shaped, just like this. And let's just do it like that. This makes it more stylized, and I like it. By stylized, I mean a little less natural, quote-unquote, looking. Of course, nothing about this is real. I'm not going to find this in nature. It's more of a Seussical, Dr. Seuss, you know, a Seussical approach, which I love. And then around this one. And around the outside. All the way. There we go. I'm liking that. Let's do it on the inside too, because now it just doesn't make sense. So we'll go around the inside of this and around each of these flowers. In a future video, I will do more with color. You'll see in the tiles I've shared so far of my own that I do use color, and I use it a lot. In fact, I am not afraid to, whoopsie, forgot those, to use color and to diverge from the sort of traditional Zentangle method. But that's not to say that they don't use color, because they do. But I will say, you know, it seemed like I was following the Zentangle method, and even went to training to learn how to teach it and learn all about it, and they were really focused on the black and white approach, you know, on the white tiles with the black pen. But they have added the Renaissance tile I showed you in the beginning of this video, black tiles, those were around when I started, black tiles in all the shapes that they do, the Renaissance tile, the white tile, and now they also have a gray tile, which is just beautiful. And I haven't worked with it much, so maybe I'll bring out those gray tiles and learn in public with you how to use them. This is interesting. I like the way this looks. It's got a, I don't know, it's just interesting looking now. I want to figure out how to make that border have a little more continuity with the rest of it. But let me see, where do I want to try to do that? I think I might try to do it with shading. So for the sake of this one, I'm going to start shading it. Let's see. Now with shading, when you're doing a whole piece like this, you do have to be a little bit careful that you don't put your hand on top of where you've just put your graphite, because not only do you end up with a dirty hand, but you smudge the graphite all over it. So I try to hold my pencil up high or like this and not put my side of my hand on it. I'm not always successful, but that is my attempt. And so these different sections can be shaded a lot of different ways. I'll show you how I'm going to do them. This portion here, I'm going to do my graphite right along the sides of these stepping stones, the row of them like this, right down the side. I'm going to be pulling that graphite into these stepping stones, but having the shadow be on the outside of them, going in, which means the highlighted portion, or the least shaded, will be the top of the stone. So it will look like it recedes on the edges and pops out in the front. You remember that what's lightest is closest to you, what's darkest is furthest away when you're doing shading. And that's not just furthest away, it's also just what's in the shadow, what has a shadow being cast upon it by its own shape or by something else that's near it. Okay, there's that. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to deal with this part in the middle yet. Maybe I'll just go like this. And then I'll push the graphite out. Now, wherever it appears that one thing, if it were three-dimensional, lays on top of another thing, is where I like to shade. So I think these little rainbows, crescent moons, look like they lay on top of these things underneath. And so I'm going to put my graphite on the outer edge of that crescent moon. And then working around each place where I feel like it goes over the thing behind it, I'm going to put the graphite down on the outer edge of the part that I think is on the top, which sort of implies that it's casting a shadow below it. And I just do that all the way around. Again, trying not to put my hand where I'm laying down this graphite because it will smudge it all over. Sometimes just the shading step alone just makes it pop, just brings it to life. I was pretty intimidated by doing the shading when I first started. I would just do one little line and not try to mess it up and all of that, but I've learned that you can hardly do too much. There are times when you can, but hardly. Alright, so then here, I'm going to do this real dark in there, where this whole piece sort of lays on top of that background. Lots of graphite in this area, where those stems come out of this shield, if you will. I like to call these things different names based on what I think they look like. So I keep going around here. There we go. Now these things definitely sit on top. These mucas are definitely on top of the things beneath them. So I'll put my shading there. Let's see here. I'll put that shading on the outside of that portion. And in here, put it here on the outside, on the inside border of this. You'll ask me, maybe, how do you decide where to shade? And I wish I could tell you that there's a trick to knowing which things are on top and which are behind. I just think you could learn it with your own eye. And you just get more comfortable and confident with it. So, and practice of doing these different tangles and knowing, whoopsie, I went inside that a little more than I had hoped. But no harm done. Remember to breathe. Enjoy the process, watching it come to life. Knowing you created something, a thing of beauty and interest, and also experienced a time of quiet, focus. Okay. Now, let's take the tortillon and start in the middle and start this shading, pushing this graphite out into each of the elements and see how we did. I'm continuing to push this graphite into all around where I've laid it down and push it onto the paper, into those areas where I want it to have a sense of shadow. Well, I think I've got it all where I did my shading. And you know, that outer border didn't quite work out the way I hoped. It just sort of seems to be hanging out there and not really integrated in any way. So I'm looking for a way to integrate it a little more. Make it, you know, feel like it belongs with this centerpiece in some way. So I am not sure how I'm going to do that yet. Now let's put a little bit of this extra graphite that I have on my tortillon around the bulbs of these things. And you know that you can, I said earlier, you can't hardly put too much shading down, but it's not true, because if you shade everything, then nothing is shaded. So that's where I run into that risk here of making everything gray, and then nothing is white, and then there's no contrast. So that's all I'm going to do with those. I like for them to have a little bit of brightness to them, and I am sure that you're not seeing the shade. There we go. That's a better angle for you relative to that shading, where you can see how much of a difference in, you know, the 3D nature of this. This is where I think it's most successful here, right? Where these look almost now tubular, really nice, and this shading in here, I like this here too. All of that, but I want to work on this outer edge a little bit more and get a little more integration there. And so I'm going to squeeze some little swirlies in there, like this. And it's okay to draw right over your previous shading. There we go. Now I've got a little more continuity. It feels like there's an inside and an outside. I don't know why, but that feels better to me. So let me just do my quick shading in on this, and I'm going to just do it on the outside edge of that in each case. It's sort of in here. Try to differentiate it a little bit from the flowers I did earlier. That'll make those pop out a little bit more. Okay, that's it. Now I'll use this tortillon to work that in a little bit. that's it. Now, I sincerely probably will never leave those little flowers like that. I will have to. I'm compelled to color them in. And so I'm going to look for something I can do that with. Maybe I have a pretty red crayon. I love these Progresso Koh-i-Noor woodless crayons, or woodless pencils is what they are. It's a woodless pencil, and I just love it. It has no wood. And they're soft and cool and comfortable to hold. I just love them. So I'm coloring in these little tulip things here, nice and red for Valentine's Day or Christmas or your birthday or whenever. There we go. I like it. Let's see. Let me give you a view of it with that. Pretty cool. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you've enjoyed it. This came out to be pretty neat, and I love the particular choice of tangles that we included in this, and a bunch of different elements that I think are really neat, and I look forward to doing them again. And I hope you enjoyed it and that you'll return again. Please don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video and you'd like me to do more. And I'd love to hear your comments about what you liked and what you'd like to see more of and less of. And just thanks so much for joining me. Really appreciate you. Bye-bye now.